everyone, Morgie right here again, and today we are going to be doing my second video of ranking all of the D&D 5e spells. Last video we did the level 1 spells, and today we are doing the level 2 spells, because, I don't know, I think it's kind of fun, and maybe it'll help someone out there when they're building their character. This is just my opinion. If you find some of these spells to your liking, that's totally fine. It's just, this is how I've personally felt when using these spells. I've ranked them by my favorite, love these, like these, sometimes helpful to me, very situational, and I wouldn't pick them myself. We are going to start. They're not alphabetical or anything, but that's okay. We will just go with what we got. So, Dust Devil. Now, I don't remember what this one is, so let me look it up. So, Dust Devil appears to be kind of similar to Moonbeam, except that it does bludgeoning damage, it heavily obscures the area, and it can push creatures back if they fail a strength saving throw. But unlike Moonbeam, you can move it on a bonus action instead of a full action. So it's kind of interesting. I'm going to put in that it would be, I haven't used it myself, but I could see in situations where it could be useful. The only thing is that Moonbeam does radiant damage, Dust Devil does bludgeoning damage. The strength saving throw, a lot of monsters in D&D are very high in strength, but I could see how it sometimes could be helpful to me, especially if you're not a class that has access to a spell like Moonbeam. So I could see it being sometimes useful. Gift of Gab. Gift of Gab is a fantastic RP ability that lets anybody in the area forget what you said for the last 6 seconds so that you can undo something that you might have said accidentally. It's a reaction, so you can just be like, uh-oh, I said something I wasn't supposed to say. I would like to turn back time and make it so I didn't say that thing. So it's a very good RP spell for that reason. And, you know, sometimes you do say something and a person has a bad reaction to what you said, and you're like, oh no. So it's the oh no spell. So I'm gonna say that I like or love. I love this spell just because there's no other real spell like it in the game that's similar to this, where it's oh no reaction spell of like, I said something I wasn't supposed to say. So I think it's great. I love it. It comes from Acquisitions Incorporated. That module has a lot of interesting spells that are cool. Locate animals or plants. It lets you find an animal or a plant of a specific description within 5 miles, which is a pretty big area. And say if you were hunting a specific animal or trying to find a specific, I don't know, magic tree or something like that, I suppose it could be useful. But otherwise, I don't really see the use of it in most other situations. The wording of the spell is also a little bit interesting because in the first line it says you can find a beast, but in the second line it can find a creature. And the word creature in D&D is very wide. Technically, all humanoids are creatures, so this is similar to locate person? I guess it would depend on what your DM rules it as. So I would say that very situational. If you specifically knew that that's what you were trying to do that day, and you were able to prepare it, might be helpful, but otherwise I don't see anyone taking it, especially if you're not a prepared spellcaster. Phantasmal Force. Phantasmal Force, I always think is going to be better than it is, and because it sounds really cool. And then I use it, and it's always a little bit disappointing. It doesn't do damage on the first round of you use it in combat. You have to make an illusion that would cause damage to it or won't cause damage to it. But as an RP spell, it's pretty interesting. Say if you were trying to get information out of someone and you use this spell to make them see something that you can try to think is real. Because it's like in their brain. It's not like an illusion everyone can see. So I would say that it sometimes could be helpful, but in combat, I've used it, and also Phantasmal Killer, which is the higher version of this. And the fact that it doesn't do damage until later turns is a little bit tricky. But it is a very interesting spell. It's just, I've used it before and it's been kind of hit or miss. I think it's better as an out-of-combat spell. Skywrite. You make a message appear in the sky. So if you want someone to see it, that's great. Everybody else is going to see it too. So depending on your situation, that might not be helpful. It is a ritual spell though, so it doesn't require a spell slot. I would say very situational, but when you get the chance to use it, it probably feels really good. Wither and Bloom. Wither and Bloom is a really cool necromancy spell that heals people, heals one person, causes damage to another person. It's one of the very few ways that wizards can heal people, and warlocks and those kind of classes. So I do like this spell. I find the healing and the damage is a little bit low. Because it uses hit dice for the healing, you can heal things that may not necessarily be allowed to heal normally. So it's interesting. It's an interesting spell. I like it personally. Acid Arrow. Acid Arrow is a okay spell. It does damage. It does recurring damage every turn, as long as the person doesn't take a chance to get rid of the acid somehow. It still does damage even if it doesn't hit. I just personally prefer other spells that do similar things, like Ice Knife. So yeah, I'm gonna say sometimes helpful, but it's not my favorite distance spell. Blur is a very good spell. It is a concentration spell, but if you're a spellcaster, it makes it so they have disadvantage on the attacks against you. So, you know, if you're a spellcaster in the early game and you don't have a lot of AC, it's a good way to kind of protect yourself a little bit. Fortune's Favor is a spell that is from the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. It is a Dunamancy spell, so it depends on if your GM allows you to use Dunamancy as a possibility for spells, and whether they allow spells from other books, whether you can even have this spell. But it is basically a preemptive Silvery Barbs. So you have it for an hour, and you can choose to roll an additional d20, give yourself advantage when you want to roll something, or you can give something attacking you disadvantage, but it's preemptive, whereas Silvery Barbs is a reactive. So I know a lot of GMs, DMs don't like Silvery Barbs, but I find Fortune Favors is just maybe a less good Silvery Barbs. It's also not a ritual spell, I guess, so you can't give it to everybody. Yeah, I would say it's situational for me personally. Maybe someone in the comments can explain to me how it's actually amazing. Preemptive Silvery Barbs for me. Lesser Restoration is always good to have, especially at lower levels. Poison, disease, all of the more common statuses can really mess you up as a lower level player. Can't get rid of the big things like curses and max HP effect and stuff like that. I think it's a kind of have to take spell for clerics and alchemists, maybe even druids, because poison's just a really annoying thing to have, and it's a good way to get rid of that, unless you have a paladin in your group and they can use 5 HP of lay on hands. I find it's kind of a needed to take spell. Nystul's Magic Aura. I have to review this one. Okay, so this is a spell where you can use it to give someone trying to spy on you the wrong information. So it's definitely, I would say, situational, but it's really cool situational. I would say it would even be sometimes helpful depending on the kind of game you're playing. If you're playing a game where you're RPing a lot of deception and you're trying to hide from a lot of magic users, it's a good thing if you have, if you're playing with people who are hollow ones, to hide the fact that they give off an undead aura. You can put it on items to make items appear magical or not magical. It has a lot of interesting uses, so I would say it's sometimes helpful, depending on the game you're playing. Shatter is one of my favorite level 2 damaging spells. It's great for damage, it's great for destroying objects if you need to destroy them. I had a character use it to escape out of a situation where a building was collapsing on them, and they cast Shatter to make a pathway out of the building, so it has some out-of-combat uses as well. It's not quiet. If you're doing stealth, Shatter's a bad spell, but for damage, there's not a lot of spells that bards can do that have damage, besides the psychic damage spells. So I find Shatter just a really all-over good spell, personally. Warding Wind is an interesting protective spell. It makes it so that it's hard for creatures to pass through. It's hard for them to do ranged attacks through it. It also blows away any vapor or clouds. So it has some uses. So I would say it could sometimes be helpful as a defensive spell or a situational spell. So I think it's got some uses. I've never used it myself, but I can see how it could be useful. Beast Sense allows you to touch a beast and see through its senses and use those senses as your own. I would say if you have someone in your group with Find Familiar, where they can see through the eyes of their creature telepathically, it's probably better to just use that ability rather than use Beast Sense, which is a 2nd level spell that you cannot cast ritually. So I'm going to say I wouldn't pick it myself, but I suppose if you have no one in your group, you have no druids in your group who can just turn into animals, you have no wizards in your group that have Find Familiar, I still think you could probably find a better way to gather information than to look through a beast's eyes. So that's just a personal one for me. I can't really see how it would be useful. And it's a 2nd level spell, and I don't feel like you get a whole lot out of it for that. Detect Thoughts, a great spell. You can read surface thoughts without them realizing. You can delve deeper and they will realize it, but you know, sometimes you have to. Great for interrogating people without, you know, doing the stuff that we don't want to talk about. Yeah, great spell. Gentle Repose, situational, but it's I'm gonna put at the top of very situational because, you know, sometimes you have a dead body and you don't have anything you can do with it right now, and it stops the dead body from decomposing. It stops the timer for that body going bad, basically. So it's situational, but when you need it, it's useful as heck. Levitate, I'm sure there's a situation where Levitate would be useful, but the fact that you can't move while you're levitating, even a little bit, even super slowly. I always want Levitate to be like a weaker version of Fly, but it's not. So you can make yourself levitate, but you can't move yourself. Other people can move you. You can push against another surface. If you make something else levitate, you can move it with an action. It's kind of like in Free Rin when every time they have to make Shark float because he's gone unconscious for some reason. I would say situational. I've never seen it used that helpfully, but I'm sure someone has, just not me. The fact that Fly is the next level up and is so much more useful in so many ways, Levitate just seems like I would just wait until I got Fly, personally. But that's just me. Pass Without Trace is one of my favorite spells in the game. My players use it all the time. Basically, the only stipulation is you have to remain in a group close together, or else they lose the benefit of it. Whoever casts the spell, they have to stay within 30 feet of them. But goodness gracious is a good spell. I love that spell. And the fact that you cannot be found, like, followed later is also great. Like, if your group's trying to get away from someplace safely, they can't be tracked. That's also a thing that is great. Silence. I like this spell. I have seen it used to good use. It stops a lot of spellcasters from being able to cast certain spells. It does have an area of effect, so they have to move out of that area, and if they do, then they can cast spells again. But it's useful. So, I do like it. It's just, I don't like it as much as other people do, I think. Web. I also like web. It makes it hard for people to move around. And, I think it specifies that the webs are flammable. I gotta double check that. Yes, I just checked the webs are flammable. They restrain people. It makes the area difficult terrain even if they aren't restrained. So I have used these where I got to web up an entire group of baddies and then cast fireball on them. So they got the fireball damage and then also the web fire damage. So it's very satisfying to do. So I do like that spell. It does require 2 steps to a process, but it is fun. It's a fun spell if you can get or if you can match it up with someone else and they can, someone can web and someone else can cast the fire. It's fun. It's fun to do. Blindness, Deafness. It is an interesting spell. I do find the blindness more effective than the deafness, personally. I'm gonna say sometimes helpful, depending on the situation. because if you cast blindness on someone who's a big melee combatant and you can suddenly give them disadvantage on everything, that's really helpful. And a lot of spellcasters require being able to see their targets. Very helpful. So the deafness part of it, I haven't seen used before, but the blindness part of it, it can be helpful depending on the situation. So sometimes helpful. Dragon's Breath. This spell is pretty fun. It only takes a bonus action. It is concentration. It lasts a minute, but you get to choose the damage type and it does a 15-foot cone. So it's kind of like Burning Hands, but you can keep doing it, and it's in a cone. And you can choose the damage type. So yeah, I'd say I like that spell. It's pretty cool. I don't see it come up very often, but I think it sounds fun. It sounds like a fun spell to do every once in a while, just be a little chaotic. Gust of Wind. Has sometimes been useful to me. It's really good to get rid of fog clouds. It's really good to blow enemies back to get them away from you. Yeah, it's definitely, I've seen it used in a helpful way. Locate Object is situational, but when you need it, it's very helpful. So it only works within 1,000 feet, which isn't very much, but the fact that you don't actually have to know, you just have to be familiar with the object or know the name of the object to find it, it can be useful. There's lots of situations where you're trying to locate something for a quest, and it can help you not get lost if you're in a dungeon. So I would say sometimes helpful, more than very situational, because it is, I've had it come up where comes up in frequent situations where it's helpful. It's situational, but it's frequent. So Prayer of Healing is a very strong out-of-combat spell because it takes 10 minutes to cast. It's good for when the party is getting down for like a short rest, so it's very strong. So I do love this spell, but it is an out-of-combat healing spell. But incredibly useful, especially if you're taking a short rest and you plan on fighting in more combat later. Snylock Snowball Swarm. It's not the greatest spell in the world, but I love it. I think it's hilarious, and so I like it. It's not the best spell in the world, but it's kind of fun. It's a fun little spell. Wrist Pocket is great if you have a small item that you need to conceal, such as a weapon, or just something you need to keep out of sight for protective purposes, that you don't want someone to be able to pickpocket off of you. So sometimes helpful. It's a helpful little spell. It's one of those fun little spells that you don't need all the time, but when you do need it, it's great to have. Wrist Pocket is another one from Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. So again, it depends on if your GM or DM allows you to pick spells from that book. And it is concentration. So if you're hiding something and you get hit and you lose concentration, I guess it just pops back out and then it's not safe anymore. So it's fun. I like it. I never know how to pronounce this. Aganazar Scorcher? Spelled wrong here. It's Aganazar's Scorcher. Is line and instead of a cone and stronger than Burning Hands. So it's a really good evocation spell for second level. Honestly, it's probably what you should take instead of Burning Hands nowadays. So I will say love this because it's basically just upgraded Burning Hands. It does a line instead of a cone. So unless you specifically want a cone to get more guys in it, but it's stronger Burning Hands. It does 3d8 instead of 3d6. So that's up to you. Bar of Knowledge is an interesting spell. It gives you proficiency in a skill in which you choose for an hour, but you can't ritual cast it. And so, yeah, I would say very situational. I feel like you could just ask someone in your party who has proficiency in that skill and to do the thing instead of you wasting a second level spell slot on it. Yeah, for me personally, I don't see how it would be very useful. Yeah, possibly, but yeah, I don't see it. I even wouldn't even pick it myself, actually. Yeah, I don't think I would even pick it. I think I would just hope that someone else in my group has proficiency in the skill I'm trying to do, and if they don't, well, sucks to suck, I guess, but I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't think I would pick it myself. Enhance ability. I use this spell all the time. The fact that you can choose what ability to enhance is great. So yeah, I love that spell. When I had an alchemist, I used it all the time on people. It was very helpful. Ooh, the spelling on this one. I didn't check some of the spelling. These are interesting. Healing Spirit. Healing Spirit is an AoE healing spell that only does a 5-foot cube of space. It can heal a couple of times depending on what your spellcasting modifier is. 1 plus it. And you can move it, and it is only a bonus action to cast. It seems like a lot to go through when you could probably just upcast a Cure Wounds or a Healing Word. So I would say situational. I think I'd rather just specifically heal someone than have a very small AoE heal that people would have to walk into to get. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. If anyone wants to let me know in the comments and explain how that's cool, let me know. Magic Mouth is situational. Probably I would say very situational. But the situations where it would come up with are probably pretty cool. I'm sure those situations would be fun. Protection from poison is extremely situational. It does get rid of poison. So it's like a slightly lesser restoration. And it would be very useful if you were going up against something that did poison damage in the next hour, like a green dragon or something like that. But, or if you're going to a dinner where you think you're going to be poisoned. I don't know. But, yeah. Very situational. So, Spider Climb. I love this spell. It's always good for people who aren't terribly good at climbing things. They don't have to worry about climbing it. They can just climb stuff anyway. Spider Climb I find is a very useful spell in a lot of situations. Zone of Truth has sometimes come up helpful, but the person who it's on knows probably knows what's going on, and if they aren't talking, it won't help because it only lets them not lie. Doesn't stop them from talking, though. Suppose you could combine it with a charm person, so they're more likely to talk to you. But it has become helpful in some circumstances, especially if you're trying to prove to someone that you mean well. It has useful things, and it has come up useful for me, but it has a lot of conditions on it, which make it a little trickier to use. Aid is a great spell. It's a great group heal, great low-level group heal. You don't have a lot of those at low levels. Aid helps a lot. It doesn't do a lot, but if you got a couple people down in your group, it can bring them back up. It's a great thing to cast at the beginning of the day, too, just give people a little extra HP. Branding Smite. I haven't personally played that many Paladins. I think there's other smites that are better, but I'd say I like it. I like all the smites. Enlarge Reduce. I love this spell. I love it. It's so funny. I've seen it used on objects. I've seen it used on player characters. I've seen it used on NPCs. All around, it's just a fun spell to use, and it is helpful. Have someone too big who can't get through an area, you can make them smaller. You can make a door smaller so that it doesn't fit on its hinges anymore. Yeah, it's a great spell. Heat Metal is also a really great spell. You know what? I'm going to put Enlarge Reduce to one of my favorites, actually. Heat Metal is a great spell, especially if you're fighting people in armor. You can make them drop their weapons. If they're wearing armor, they have to take it off, and heavy armor takes a long time to take it off, or be taken off. It doesn't work as well in spellcasters, but there's a lot of situations where you're fighting people in armor. Heat Metal can be very useful, and it does a fair amount of damage, and its concentration. Zbashu, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing his name incorrectly, he did a really good video about how good Heat Metal is in situations, so, recommend. Magic Weapon is a great spell for before you get magic weapons earlier in the game. It makes any non-magical weapon a +1 magic weapon. It's not concentration, it lasts an hour. If you're going to fight something that's probably going to be resistant to non-magical damage, great spell. Yeah. I think it's a really good spell. It does, it does lose its usefulness later as you start to get magical items later in the game. But at the beginning of the game, when you're just learning spells at level 2, fantastic spell. Pyrotechnics. Pyrotechnics is a combination of Fog Cloud and Color Spray. You can choose whichever one you want. So if you're a fan of Fog Cloud or Color Spray, it's a good spell. It also can be used just for fun. Just to make a big loud noise to cause a distraction or something. So I'm going to say I like it. If you're someone who has Fog Cloud or Color Spray already, you can just replace them with this one, Spike growth. I'm a fan of Ox Venture. Merylwyn's Meat Grinder. Combination this with Grease. I don't know if that's the rules as written for how it could work, but this is kind of just an annoying spell, and because of Merylwyn's Meat Grinder, I'm going to say I like it. Air Bubble. What level do you learn underwater breathing at? Honestly, Air Bubble's kind of funny, but I would just wait till 3rd level to get water breathing. So I wouldn't pick it myself, especially if I'm not a prepared spellcaster. Very situational. I guess if you absolutely have to go underwater, you can send one person down who can breathe, and you don't have water breathing yet. Sure, Air Bubble could be used, but yeah. Calm Emotions is a surprisingly good spell. It can affect a lot of things. It can get rid of charm effects. It can make people ignore people you don't want them to attack. It has a lot of uses, so I love this spell. Enthrall. Enthrall is fine. I think it could be used in interesting ways, but I think other spells are probably better for what it wants to do. Doesn't require concentration though, but it's going into very situational. Whole Person. Great spell. Takes someone out of the fight if it fails, they're incapacitated, drops their concentration, makes everybody, they're paralyzed, which means people can do a lot of damage to them. Hold Person is a great spell. Maximilian's Earthen Grasp is kind of like a weaker Hold Person that also does damage. It restrains the creature, and it's a strength saving throw to get out of it, so I like it. Ray of Enfeeblement makes an attacker do less damage. Honestly, I wouldn't pick it myself. I would rather just do an attack that does damage or does kind of some kind of status to the attacker. So I wouldn't pick it myself personally. I think that there's other best case combat spells that take a 2nd level spell slot. So Spiritual Weapon. I really like this spell. It's a little extra buddy to do some damage, especially when you're a cleric and you feel like you're not doing a lot of damage. You can move it on a bonus action. This is the original, the 5e version of Spiritual Weapon. I know that Spiritual Weapon is one of the spells that changed in the new version of the rules, but yeah. It also can't be damaged, I don't believe. I think it's just a phantasmal weapon, so it can just do chip damage on enemies while you can use your cleric time to heal people, and you can still do a little bit of damage to one of the enemies. So I think it's a really cool spell. Alter Self is one of my favorite spells in the game. I like that it's like Disguise Self, but it's a physical change. I like that you can alter yourself so that you have some abilities like breathing underwater or giving yourself natural weapons like claws or something like that. I think it's really cool. It is a concentration spell and it only lasts for an hour, but I've used it so much in my games, and yeah, I just think it's really, really fun. I gave my girl a mermaid tail once so she could have a swim speed underwater and breathe. It was awesome. So, one of my favorite spells, Alter Self. Cloud of Daggers. Cloud of Daggers does a lot of damage, but you can't move it, I don't believe. I'm not a fan of effects like that last for a period of time, but you can't move them. So for me, personally, I would consider it situational. Find Steed is just kind of a fun spell. I like it. You get a little friend that you can talk to telepathically. You can ride it in combat. You can ride it out of combat. You can get to choose what it looks like. I just think it's fun. Yeah, I like it. Immovable Object. I did not even know this was a spell. I've heard of an immovable rod, but let's look it up. It's basically cast a spell on an object and make it an immovable rod, but only for an hour. So I guess it could work, but I would just try to get an immovable rod instead of taking a spell that only makes something an immovable rod for an hour. It's from Explorer's Guide to Wildmount as well. I wouldn't take it. but maybe you guys can make an argument for why you should. Mind Spike is a fantastic spell. Fantastic damaging psychic spell. It also has the fun side effect that if you cast it and hit and they fail their saving throw and they try to go invisible, it doesn't work on you. You already know where it is, which is situational but fun as heck. So I love that spell. It's good damaging psychic spell at 2nd level, and it has a cool side effect. Win-win. Rhymes Binding Ice. This is a cool spell. It is a con save. It does some cold damage, 3d8 cold damage, which is a decent amount of damage, and it stops the person who it gets hit by from moving for a minute, or unless it takes an action to break the ice away. So yeah, I like that spell. The only downside to me is the fact that it's a Constitution saving throw, and a lot of monsters you fight have high con, but I think it's kind of neat. Cast that on a spellcaster and stick them to the floor. It's pretty cool. Suggestion is a great spell. You combine that with a sorcerer's subtle spell ability, which I have seen happen many times, and you can just Jedi mind trick everybody. It's fantastic. Even if you don't have that, Suggestion's a great spell. Animal Messenger is like sending for druids, where you just pick a small animal and you have it send a message for you, but it doesn't go immediately. It takes a little while to get there. So sending is level 3. This is level 2. I hope that animal knows how to get back to where it came from after you cast the spell. Sometimes helpful, I guess, if you don't have anybody who has sending and you have a druid or a ranger who can cast this spell. I would probably just wait for sending, personally. I'm even going to put very situational. It's interesting. It's an interesting spell, but it's a strange spell. It's sending with more conditions and more steps needed. Continual Flame is just kind of cool. It's kind of a cool spell. It's a flame spell. I don't think it does any damage. It just lasts forever if you don't dismiss it. Or it gets Dispel Magicked or something. It does take a 50 gold piece ruby to cast, so you might want to be sure that you want a flame there forever. But I think I kind of like it. I like the idea behind it, and it's something that you can have in like a wizard's tower that has been abandoned for centuries, but the continual flames are still going. So I just think it's kind of cool. Find traps. No. I don't know if it's better now with the new rules. I would not pick this spell. Just have someone with good perception look through the room. I don't even think it tells you where the spells are. I don't even think it tells you where the traps are. It just says there's traps in here. Useless. Useless spell. I guess it also has the secondary condition of telling you if there's an alarm or glyph spell. But again, it doesn't tell you that it's there, where it is. It just tells you that it's there. I hate that spell. And I don't think I'm the only D&D player who does. Invisibility. One of the most useful spells in the game. This guy. One of the most useful spells in the game. Great for stealthing through places. Great for in combat if you want like a little bit of an extra advantage on an attack or trying to avoid damage. It has a lot of ways to break invisibility, but it's a great friggin' spell. It's wonderful. Mirror Image. Mirror Image and Blur, I always have trouble choosing which one I like better. I'm sure there's like a mathematical difference between the two where one is better than the other, but really I just choose whichever thematically I like for a character. Because having both seems kind of redundant, personally. They both have pros and cons. So really I just choose between them, but both of them are great. Rope Trick. I like this spell for purely just situational silliness. It's one of those ones where it's probably should be in this section, but I just like it so much, or it should be in Sometimes Helpful, but I just like it so much that it's going in like these. I just think it's a fun spell that is very useful when it's useful and is just kind of a fun idea for a spell. Rope goes into a little demi-plane and you and some friends can just hide out in there for a bit. And there's just a rope hanging down and it's a funny idea for a spell and I like it. Summon Beast is kind of like a temporary Find Familiar spell with less abilities. It can only be cast by Druid or Rangers. Requires concentration. I would say situational. If you don't have someone in your group with Find Familiar, it also doesn't cost money like Find Familiar does to resummon. So, you know, it could be useful to have. Arcane Lock, situational, but could be useful if you need to lock something that you don't want someone to be able to lockpick. Or I guess they can lockpick it, but it just makes it more difficult. You can also use it on a door. So, you know, very situational, but it could come in handy. I think Alarm is a better spell when it's at a lower thing. But, you know. Burden of Arrows is not what I thought it was. It's apparently some kind of trap spell. Lasts for 8 hours. I wouldn't pick it, personally. Seems even more situational than other things. I find it a little bit confusing, personally. Again, if anybody in the comments knows any other interesting way to use that, let me know, but I'm coming up with nothing. Flame Blade. I like it. It's kind of flashy. It gives your sword a little bit more damage. Magical damage. I'd say it's kind of useful. Yeah, Jim's Glowing Coin. It's a light spell that you toss, and then anybody who is nearby gets distracted by it if they fail a wisdom save. So, interesting spell. I know it's probably very situational or sometimes helpful for me, but I just kind of like it. I think it's neat. Misty Step is one of my favorite spells. Big surprise. It's a very useful spell. Gets you out of jams. Scorching Ray. Wait, who's writing these? Scorching Ray. Scorching Ray. It's a pretty good spell. I'm not one who likes to have a lot of attack spells, and this one has 3 attack spells they have to roll for. I like Magic Missile already because you have 3 beams and it hits automatically, but this does more damage than Magic Missile, so I like it, but it's not my favorite. I'd much rather take something like Agonizer's Aganazar's Scorcher or something like that. Dash's Mind Whip. I love this spell. I like psychic damage. It does less damage than Mind Spike, but it has a better second ability, which means that on the next turn, it has the person that gets hit has to choose between an action, movement, or bonus action. So it like slows down their brain, which I think is very cool. So I like both of these spells, and depending on the character, I would choose one or the other, but I think they're both really good. And I love them. Magic Aura. I don't know what the difference is between Arcanist's Magic Aura and Nystel's Magic Aura, so I'll just put this with Nystel's. I think they're the same, as far as I can tell. Crown of Madness. Crown of Madness has sometimes been helpful, but it has a lot of downsides. But it can be used in interesting ways, I think. So I know people are kind of mixed on this spell, but I have seen it used both in good ways and not been helpful. So sometimes helpful to me is this place I'm going to put it. Flaming Sphere. I like this spell, especially in Baldur's Gate 3. I like that you can move it as a bonus action and get it around places, and that it does damage even if it passes through something. So yeah, I do like this spell. Like I said, I like spells like that hang around, but you can still move them around, unlike Cloud of Daggers and those ones, which I find they do a lot of damage, but you can't move them. So I prefer ones that you can move around personally. Kinetic Jaunt is okay. I could see how it would be helpful to get yourself out of danger. And it does have the benefit of being a bonus action cast. So yeah, I would say it would be sometimes helpful. Moonbeam. Now, I did say I like ones that you can move around, but Moonbeam, it requires an action to move around, so that's going to drop it down to sometimes helpful. It does a fair amount of damage, and it's radiant damage, and it affects shape changers if that's important. But the fact that you have to use a whole action to move it, for me, is a little bit of a downgrade. So sometimes helpful, whereas ones like Flaming Sphere and those that you can move as a bonus action, I find are more useful. That's just me personally. See invisibility. I love this spell. I probably used it all the time when I was an alchemist artificer. It's just really handy to see things. There's a lot of creatures who can be invisible in D&D. So, see invisibility is very helpful. It doesn't require concentration. Also, it has the side effect of being able to see into the ethereal plane, which has come in handy for me. So, I love that spell. Vortex Warp. Let's put it all the way up to love. It allows you to move a creature away from you to another point away from you. It can be used against an enemy, but they get a saving throw. But if you use it against an ally, you can get your ally out of a dangerous situation. And it's great. I used it so much. So, highly recommend that spell. It has a lot of handy uses. Augury is an RP spell, but I do like it. I like divination spells like that. Darkness. Darkness is pretty good. I do like to use it. I'll say sometimes helpful, actually, because unless you have characters that can see through magical darkness, it can be a mixed blessing. But when you need it, it works really good. So I'll say sometimes helpful. Flock of Familiars. This is an interesting spell that I've never heard of before. It's from the Lost Laboratory of Qualish. And basically it makes it so that if you already have a familiar, it only makes 2, but if you don't have a familiar, it makes 3. And you summon them for an hour, and it works as the Find Familiar spell, but you have 3 options to use it on. So that's pretty cool. I would like that, I think. I would find ways to use that in interesting ways, I think. Knock, sometimes useful. Sometimes it's nice to just be able to open a door that you're struggling to open, so you just use magic. Nather's Mischief is like casting a tiny little wild magic table that does different useful things in a fight. I would say sometimes helpful, and I do like it. You know, you like a little bit of chaos, this is a good spell. Shadowblade is like Flameblade, but even better. So I'm gonna say love. It has more uses than Flameblade. It's a less resisted type of damage, and it doesn't create light if you're trying to be sneaky. So, yeah, Flameblade is good. Shadowblade is better, in my opinion. Warding Bond. Sometimes helpful. Sometimes it's really nice to be able to give someone more AC and share some damage with them. It doesn't apply to a lot of different classes that can do this, but I've seen it used very well. So yeah, it's sometimes helpful. It's a cool little spell. It's really cool for if your players are like in a relationship as well. RP wise, it's a very cool spell. Arc Skin gives you an AC of 16, no matter what, for 1 hour. It is concentration though, so you can technically put that on and then lose it the next time you get hit. So that would kind of suck. But, you know, we'll say sometimes helpful. Depending on the type of player the character you're playing, it could become useful. Obviously, things like mage armor are better, but this usually applies to classes that don't have mage armor. Yeah, could be useful, I guess, but usually there's better ways to increase your AC, so. Dark Vision. So many ancestries in D&D have the ability to see in darkness anyway. So I would say sometimes helpful, but generally you just have the people who can see guide the people who can't. Unless for some reason you got the group I'm currently in and accidentally nobody in my group can see in darkness. But in that case, they just have light, so could be helpful. I would even knock it down to very situational, because I find if they can't see, either the people who can see can guide, or they just use light. So there's other things I'd rather use a 2nd level spell slot on, so. And that looks like all of them. So we've got my favorites, we've got I love these spells, we've got I like these spells, we've got spells that are sometimes helpful for me, we've got spells that are very situational for me, and spells that I wouldn't pick, which there's not that many. If you like these spells at the bottom, that's totally fine. Feel free to let me know in the comments what you like about them or how you've used them. But generally, these are spells that I would probably pick other spells over these ones if I was not a prepared spellcaster, or even if I was a prepared spellcaster choosing my spells for this day. For that day, I would probably not. I'd probably use different spells. So, that's all. Thanks for watching. If you like what you've seen, be sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time. I hope you're having a great day, and if you're not having a great day, I hope your bad day is over with soon. And we'll talk to you later.